All righty, Brett, you're good to go.
All right, should I jump right in?
Yes, sir. That would be great.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, we begin by acknowledging that we across the country meet on the traditional lands served by Native peoples. We honor America's first people and all elders past, present, and emerging. And we're called on to learn and share what we learn about the tribal history, culture, and contributions that have been suppressed in the telling of the story of America. My name's Brett Mckem. I'm the president of the National Council of Urban Education Associations, NCUEA, and the president of the Jefferson County Teachers Association in Louisville, Kentucky. Tonight, we have with us NEA members of the National Student Support Accelerators Tutoring Advisory Groups. Many of us at NEA have been inspired by the work that the Accelerator and the Tutoring Advisory Group have undertaken, and we're so proud of our NEA members leading this work. With us tonight, we'll have several members of the Tutoring Advisory Group. As you can see on the slide, I'll let them introduce themselves quickly to you, and then we'll get right into our questions and answers. Let's all start with Katie Allen. Katie.
Move on, she's not here.
Looks like Katie has not been able to join us. So let's go to Connie.
Hi, I'm Connie Michael. I'm a fifth grade teacher at Crow Agency Public School in Montana.
Melissa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Milano Vargas. I teach ESL for a school in Somerset, New Jersey.
Do we have John with us this evening? I'm not sure we have John. If not, let's go to Estefania.
Hi, my name is Estefania Rios. I am a high school English teacher in Rahway, New Jersey.
Katrinette. Oh, I think you're muted.
You're mute. You're on mute, Kat.
Talking away. I apologize. Hello, everyone. My name is Katrinette Sims, and I am with the Huntsville City School System, and I'm a high school teacher teaching career tech education.
All right, thank you. And Maurice.
Hi, my name is Maurice Tullisford. I'm a high school science teacher in a district just north of Detroit, Michigan. I teach science, and I'm also our local EA president.
And Shane.
Hi, my name is Shane Serrano. I teach middle school science at the Melvin H. Krebs School in Hightstown, New Jersey.
And Tony, is Tony with us this evening?
I am. I'm Tony Hicks. I teach second grade in Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
All right. And are there any others that would like to introduce themselves? If not, we thank all of you for joining us this evening. Let's get started with our questions. Our first question is for Connie. Connie, can you tell us what is the National Student Support Accelerator?
Sure. The National Student Support Accelerator is a program of the Annenberg Institute at Brown University that's devoted to translating promising research about how tutoring can benefit students into action on the ground. Their visions that every K-12 student in need will have access to an effective tutor that champions and ensures their learning and successes.
All right, so you told us about the Student Support Accelerator. Now can you tell us about the Tutoring Advisory Group?
I can. We're a group of educators from across the United States that partner with the National Student Support Accelerator to provide feedback on tools and technical assistance, materials, and communication to ensure the accelerators work to support educators and students' needs.
That's great. Thanks, Connie. it's really helpful in setting the stage for how the work has come about. Steph, how would you describe your experience as part of the tutoring advisory group?
Hello. I think my experience has definitely been a rich and valuable one. Working with my team, it feels like a second tribe. You have one at school, and then you have one after school when you're working with wonderful people who are really committed to student learning and just overall the profession. When you leave the meeting, you actually leave feeling as if you are making a really big difference, especially after the learning gap that we are facing now with the pandemic. So it's been a blessing. It really has.
So can you tell us a little bit about what your experience is with tutoring, and how does that translate into the work you're doing with the TAG group?
Sure. So in my district, we do have a couple opportunities to tutor either individually or in groups. Usually that comes from Title I money, and we are allowed to kind of use that time to really do our research on what tutoring will look like and kind of mold it and make it our own. So when you have that experience, it makes it really easy to kind of bring realistic expectations to the conversation, talk about the challenges we face in our district. And one thing that we're definitely learning is the districts have very similar obstacles that we are facing. So it's a lot of problem solving that we do. And it allows us to kind of look at theory and practice and find a way to best fit all learner needs. So I would definitely say it's a whole child approach when we do tutoring, when I do tutoring individually or in groups. And more that I hear my colleagues in this group discuss their experience, I would definitely say that we're all kind of in this whole child approach, and we kind of bring that to the table as well, because we know dealing with our students that have been in isolation because of the pandemic and working to help them bridge that gap, you really have to make sure that their needs are being met, not only academically, but all of the other, aspects that make us special, right? So thank you.
Steph, it sounds like you have a reasonable amount of autonomy to use your professional judgment as an educator. Is that, and if that's the case, it sounds like that'd be really satisfying.
Oh my gosh, totally. Because there's a lot of times as a teacher or a team leader in your school, you find yourself giving ideas and sharing visions with people, and maybe not seeing it really kind of play out immediately or even go into the plans process, right? But with this, it's been just like you leave really feeling heard and appreciated, and you feel like your contribution is valuable, and you see it almost immediately in the district playbook and in the next agenda and the next work. So it's constantly putting on this critical lens of, yes, I am a professional with an experience, but also I am learning through this experience as well. So it's extremely rewarding, and I'm really excited to see how much this impacts our students.
That sounds fantastic, Steph. Thank you. Maurice, can you tell us about some of the challenges you're facing in the classroom and how this group can support you, and also as a local leader, your local leaders in your affiliate there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the pandemic has sort of torn society apart across the world and created a lot of challenges, but specifically for educators in the classroom, pacing is an issue. So it's really hard to keep all students engaged and learning at the same pace when students may have to quarantine for 10 days or 5 days, or have a close contact, or have a family member who might have a compromised immune system. So we're all struggling with pacing. We're all struggling with differentiating. So meeting those students at the different places they are. Being at home for a year and a half for some of our students has created a lot more emotional needs, a lot less self-regulation. We think they're used to being maybe on their phones or unsupervised or in front of a screen for a long time. So we're dealing with a lot. And the way that we think that our group and the tutoring initiative can help is sort of by bridging the gap. So if we're able to bring in tutors to do more one-on-one tutoring, coaching, mentoring, that'll help us provide better instruction for the students. And again, the gaps are large because of this pandemic and the quarantining that's been required. We're also seeing decreased motivation for some students, where they fall behind and they're not as motivated to get caught up. And we think that the sort of fine or narrow, or what's the word, the ratio of having a tutor work with small groups of students allows remediation and for students to be caught up or challenged in some areas. And teachers sometimes don't have the capacity to do that with their full classroom. So tutoring is an asset in that regard. And there are some challenges with implementing transportation for parents after school, other logistical things, but by moving the tutoring during the school day, we think that addresses a lot of those issues.
That's really helpful insight, Maurice. Thank you. Shane, what are some resources that are available to those that might be interested in high impact tutoring?
Well, the National Students Support Accelerator has actually put together a tremendous amount of resources. There is just so much available there on the website. And it's organized at the various levels that you might need it at. So at the district level, there's the district playbook, there's the toolkit for tutoring programs, which talks about the implementation of these programs, a tutoring cost calculator where you can kind of get an overview of how much it's going to cost for the district to implement. And there's also tons of promotional videos and informational videos to get tutoring started in the district. And then going from there, there's also a very in-depth educator guide that the teachers and educators in the district can use to kind of get started and figure out where this fits in the current school climate that you have and how to get it kickstarted. Also, we're currently co-developing a family guide for the families to use as the districts start to implement these types of tutoring programs. So there really is a wealth of resources available, and it's just amazing to see how much there is.
That's really helpful. And hopefully when we post this webinar, our video, we can hopefully include a link to that website so that everyone can have access to that. Let's shift gears a little bit and go to Tony. Could you tell us some of the first steps that a local union affiliate could take to advocate for high impact tutoring in their district?
So there's a few things that we can do or that you can do to get started. First thing is getting to know the educator guide for the high impact tutoring advocacy. Just kind of going through the research that has been put together so that you can learn what it is that we're trying to do here and would like to accomplish. Also, talking to people that you know have the same mind frame as far as tutoring goes, who know that they need it in their district, just to get the word out, start a buzz about the program. Talking to your teacher groups is definitely helpful. Teachers don't like to be the last to hear about things. So I think if it's a good idea to go ahead and get them on board first thing. And then we can also create a local task force of educators that gather the student data from your district in order to see how that high impact tutoring group can impact them.
When you're doing this in your district, are the tutors, is tutoring what they do all day long, or is this something that classroom teachers do and maybe a hybrid schedule or in addition to regular teaching in your case?
So in my case, we're still, most of the time you'll see it after school.
Okay.
I do think that hybrid is definitely needed more, and especially since we've been able to use Zoom and Google Meet, the students have been introduced to it through the pandemic. So I think both would be helpful for our district.
All right. And one more thing about it, if a local association is thinking about advocating for this, how do you think that high impact tutoring would affect school budgets? Do you have a sense what that impact would be?
So in the short run, I think that there's quite a few pandemic related grants, such as the ARP that is helping get the high impact tutoring going. And hopefully that the high impact tutoring will start to make a change. We'll see a change in your students and kind of shift budgets towards including the high impact tutoring and maybe getting rid of the programs that haven't been as effective.
So what I think I hear you saying, I'm processing it out loud, is that the federal rescue money, COVID funding, could fund an opportunity to start the high impact tutoring and collect data. And if it shows that it's successful, you've got, I think they call it proof of concept. And when you have proof of concept, then you have something to work from for building it in beyond the federal funding and building it into the budget. I think that's how I was processing what I was hearing, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Maurice, how do you see this impacting educator workloads? What's the footprint on the educator workload?
Well, ideally, this is going to be a system to support what the educators are doing. So we don't anticipate this being an extra burden. Obviously, there's room for stipends if there's more sort of management that has to be done or coordination that has to be done. But we think this will be an asset for teachers and, in theory, potentially lower the workload because someone else is helping with the instruction or allowing a teacher to expand what they're doing. So they're able to reach more students and educate them more thoroughly.
All right, well, that makes a lot of sense. Could you tell us, Maurice, what do you have a sense what the ideal duration of a tutoring session is?
Yeah, it varies based on grade level to some degree. So what we think is as a minimum is 3 times a week, 30-minute sessions for younger children, and then acknowledging older students can probably handle 45 to 60-minute sessions, but still keep them with a minimum of 3 times a week.
Okay. Well, this is all really helpful to grow our own understanding of high dosage tutoring. Really appreciate that. Shan, how do you see high impact tutoring meeting the needs of the many diverse learners in our schools?
So when we look at a general classroom, we're always looking at tons and tons of different types of learners. We're looking at students that have different needs. And the goal with the tutoring is really to target what those students' needs are with the data. So we pull all that data in, we target those specific needs of that student. And by bringing it on a smaller level, it really gives a big opportunity to tailor the instruction directly to that student. Even more so, we talk a lot about in TAG about personal connection to the student and the student really knowing and having that confidence that the tutor is there for them, that they're all in, that they can go on the fly and sort of switch up how they're approaching the content based on the student's needs and based on how the student is feeling that day and based on the changes that you see week to week in the learner. So those smaller groups, the focus on data, the focus on a personal connection is really what tutoring is all about. Also, when the tutors are trained and they're supervised by professional educators, this opportunity is really created to share, for educators to share tips and practices that will reach those diverse learners. And it kind of creates this cohort of teachers that are there to support each individual student.
All right. So I really appreciate that really helps us to understand that impact. When we think about tutoring, I think it's kind of natural to think in terms of just academic and the kind of core content sorts of issues. But Kat, could you tell us do you believe that there are also impacts on things like equity and even the social emotional well-being of students?
Let's unmute. Yes, so when you're talking about how does the high impact tutoring promote the equity and social well-being, social and emotional well-being of our students? First of all, we have to, many of us, when we're talking about our tutoring programs or the students within the classrooms, we're having to get to know our students. And when you get to know their students and you understand their challenges, then that's where you can start working with various programs to help implement to try to meet those needs. So with the high impact tutoring, it allows students to receive what's needed on an individual basis in order for them to be able to succeed in the classroom. And having an opportunity to do that would be including or implementing multiple opportunities. So if you have a challenge where a student it's a transportation issue, then you have some school districts that may be able to incorporate what's called enrichment periods. And so they may be able to manipulate the schedule within the day where they can do some type of tutoring program while they're in school. But having your tutoring sessions that are individualized and relevant to what's going on within the classroom will be something that you will be able to promote more. Also, additionally, your high impact tutoring places a big emphasis on your tutoring to students. So having that one-on-one opportunity to work with students, because sometimes it's better in small group instruction rather than large group instructions. And they're looking at this as the aspect of tutoring which will foster an environment where students are not only known, but they're also heard. So again, it all goes back to building those relationships. And the vision of the Accelerator group is that every K-12 student in need will have the access to an effective tutoring program that champions and ensures their learning and their successes.
Thanks, Kat. Steph, how about you? How do you see tutoring programs addressing and increasing equity in a given school district?
To kind of just piggyback about making those relationships, having a class of 25 plus, it's difficult to sometimes address the body language or the comments student make that tells you that they need a little bit more, right? Maybe not when it comes to instruction, but maybe just a little extra attention to kind of dig deeper. When you're in a smaller setting, a tutoring circle, you're able to kind of just sit there and really get to know the child and really assess what it is that they need in and outside of school. Now, if you have the tutoring within your day, you're able to kind of make sure that they're in a safe environment to learn, a quiet environment to learn, and also those problems of poor Wi-Fi or not having, the technology at home, it kind of gets eliminated because they're in a location that fosters that learning environment to be an experience that it's going to be both rewarding and also allowing the student to share with you whatever it is that they need, right? So it gives them a chance to advocate for themselves. So I definitely think equity will definitely increase having these moments with these kids in the smaller setting.
That's really helpful, Steph. Thank you. Melissa, let's really get to the core of it. Can you tell us, how do you know that high impact tutoring works?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because, at the end of the day, there's so many programs, so many methods, and we really want to know what's most effective so we don't waste our time, we don't waste our money, and we're effective. So specifically, there's been 2 recent meta-analyses found. They found that on average, tutoring interventions increase student learning outcomes by over 1/3 of a standard deviation. This is considered a very large effect for educational interventions. It translates to between 3 and 15 additional months of learning for students. So it's actually crazy because it basically means that if we do this high impact tutoring, it's as if students are getting 3 to 15 more months of extra learning. And these analyses just focused on, their academic growth and success, not on other great possible positive impacts that they would have on their lives. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting, Melissa. Thanks for sharing that. I remember seeing a few articles in Education Week talking about that and those research findings. So that's really reassuring. Let's see, Kat, what do you see as the impact of these additional tutoring programs on local unions and our membership, or even our potential membership?
When you're getting into the impact of additional tutoring programs, the number one thing that comes to my mind is going to be involvement. but it's going to largely depend on our local contracts, and just making sure that there's enough money allotted. And yes, there are different grants that are provided, but again, it goes back to those particular districts. But within those districts, knowing what's needed when it comes down to, when we go back to the social emotional well-being of our students, or trying to determine what is needed within different schools, just having that opportunity to know what to do and how to prepare for that particular school or within that particular district. So it's going to go back to your local contracts. With teachers, having them be able to buy in and understanding that this is not considered as an overload piece, and having them to understand that there are different resources out there that's going to be used in order to, that would also be effective. But then when you're talking about the resources, when you're talking about the extra pay, sometimes I feel like that would be a buy-in for a lot of people. When you're talking about negotiation, as a result of change in the working conditions. So when you see the fruits of your labor, it makes it more worthwhile and beneficial.
That makes sense. Connie, how would students be selected and grouped in a tutoring program like we're talking about?
Well, I think we've covered some possible ways. Definitely teacher input, could possibly be parent input as well. Classroom assessments as well as district assessments can be used. I think the groups can be fluid, and as students' needs change, they can change how they're grouped. Pretty much any way that you see that a child needs help, there would be that ability to get that extra help for them through the tutoring program.
All right, that's helpful to help us kind of wrap our head around how that would work. Melissa, most of our students have higher needs than ever with regard to social emotional learning. The pandemic has resulted in a lot of loss of emotional and educational self-regulation in our students. How does the nature of tutoring lend itself to helping to address these needs, even though it's not counseling, it's just tutoring? But my understanding is it can be helpful.
Right, definitely. Just the fact that tutoring is a one-on-one method or a very small group helps with the social emotional well-being of students. Because they are known, right? They're not going to get swallowed in a class of 26, but they will be known very well by their tutor. And a very important aspect of being an educator, whether you're a tutor or a teacher, is creating those emotional connections with your students. If you can't do that, maybe it's not the best career, because it's all about building relationship. When you get to build relationship, it makes it so much easier for students to learn. I remember being in school and being afraid of certain teachers, and that put a block on my brain. And so it's really important to create those relationships, and that'll help develop their social emotional well-being. There's a quote out there that says that people won't remember what you did, but how you made them feel. And I think that's one of the goals of high impact tutoring, that they would know that they're supported and that they have an adult that is a safe adult that will help them succeed.
That's so helpful, Melissa. Thank you. Shane, you get our very last question. And that is, when we're faced with a severe labor shortage in general and an educator shortage in particular, what are good ways to find tutors to work in our schools?
So there are three main ways that we've talked about bringing other people into the schools to fill this tutoring need. The first is there are dedicated companies that are specifically there to provide high impact tutoring. So these are companies that have trained tutors that have already sort of set a program up that you can easily bring into your school district. We've also discussed the possibilities of bringing local colleges and universities. We have pre-service teachers or student teachers that are currently, getting ready for a career in teaching that have the background knowledge and have all of this training that we can really utilize and bring them into the classroom a little bit early, as they're starting to learn all these skills and really get them to apply what they've learned in their colleges and university programs. Finally, there's also a lot of staff already there in place in the different districts. So paraprofessionals and other staff members who already have exposure to the school and know the populations and know the students can be brought in and given the training to help provide this and bridge the gap in the tutoring, to provide this tutoring program to the school.
Well, thank you. That is the last of our questions. This has been such a fantastic discussion. I want to thank all of you again that were able to join us tonight. We hope that this information that you've learned this evening and the very fact that our NEA members are leading on these efforts of high impact tutoring all across the country has inspired you to learn more about how you may be able to bring this programming to your area. Thank you again. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or our team at NEA headquarters, which includes Alex Center and Justin Thompson. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.